you're not the only ones that are taken up on the mountain. And again, I'm not even saying that the people up on the mountain in every case are at the top of the mountain up there with El Diablo. This is how politics works. This is how people get sold out 1 inch at a time. I got a bunch of notes here I wrote right before I went live on air. I thought about this a lot this morning, but I got to go with my gut here and tell you what I really think about all this. So call everybody you know. Tell them tune in right now. Let's not let the fact that Ron Paul's been a big victory, a big spearhead for us to fight the globalists, the banksters, the New World Order, the Federal Reserve, the Law of the Sea Treaty, the UN, the Rockefellers. But hey, ideas are bigger than Ron Paul and Rand Paul. So I'm going to keep going the same direction against the New World Order. I had tried everything. I'd cut back the ender. That's the big question here. Again, the jury is out on Ron Paul and Rand Paul. I think joining with Romney openly and not challenging him, as they do Obama, will hurt the legacy of Ron Paul and Rand Paul. There is no doubt in my mind politically that if Rand Paul stuck to his guns and behaved in the exact manner of his father, that he would end up being a super dominant force in the next election. And if he challenged election fraud in the states when it happened in Iowa and Maine, like it happened this year, and if he got really aggressive and built a movement over 4 years, he could be a bully pulpit in the Senate and absolutely dominate and block legislation and promote legislation. And he could end up being the president of the United States and pulling this republic out of where it's going. But I'll tell you this, if he supports Romney and gets a speaking slot or a cabinet position or his dad does, when Romney betrays the American people, just like Obama's done, and tries to have amnesty and tries to have socialist health care and tries to have gun control and tries to have carbon taxes, everything he supported before he ran for president. Remember, Ron Paul has run TV ads about this. All the flip-flopping. He's bought and paid for by Bain Capital. He's bought and paid for by Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan. Do I dislike Romney? No. Seems like a funny, charming guy. Obama seems like a funny, charming guy at certain levels. They're teleprompter readers. They're high-level minions of the New World Order. So all of this is a distraction and a diversion. That's why Ron Paul was different, was because he was addressing the banksters, the crony capitalists who were anti-free market. He was bypassing their system, and folks, he was winning the first primaries. That's why the polls showed him first in Maine, first in Iowa, and then it was stolen. They caught them stealing it. They wouldn't count the precincts where he was winning. Even the New York Times had to admit he really won Maine. And now we see Rand coming out and saying, well, I always supported my father, but now I support Mitt Romney. And I understand why they're doing that. I know Rand Paul personally. I've known Ron Paul for 17 years. They're good people. Who you see on TV is who they are behind the scenes. They're good people. But they've been too close to the Beltway too long, and they have this idea of, let's not lose this political capital, let's take over the Republican Party. That's not what happened. And all of your supporters, I knew you were going to do this. And I warned you guys through back channels not to do it. I warned through your family not to do it. You think you're going to go in there and influence it. It doesn't matter, because the main body of your supporters, as you can see, again, I waited for this to happen. The main body of your supporters feel totally and completely 110% betrayed. Especially when Ron Paul says, go to Tampa and be respectful. Because Ron Paul people, when they're the majority of the delegates, the Republican leadership in Louisiana and other states is taking it and saying, no, we say the delegates go for Romney. So there's that stealing going on. And they're beating up and arresting the Ron Paul supporters. And Ron Paul comes out and puts it on the supporters and says, you need to be respectful. That's the reason I'm being somewhat critical today. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. And I better watch it, or I'm going to start saying more right here. Forget trying to influence Romney to be a constitutionalist. How about we influence Ron Paul and Rand Paul to be constitutionalist? How about you listen to your supporters and not Jesse Benton? And I'm not saying Jesse Benton's the bad guy here, but let me tell you, I've been around it for 6 years. And Jesse Benton shouldn't be the tail wagging the dog. The first Rand Paul supporters were my radio show. The first people in his campaign, when no one was there, it was grassroots, were my listeners. I've met them. I've had dinner with them. His head people. And they said, what do you think about what's happening? You know, and I said, let's wait and see. And I know Rand and Ron are good people. They're good people. And they've got great voting records. But I'm not going to sit here and watch this seduction of the Paul campaign and family without saying, hey, we don't just go wherever you go. You need to understand that. Okay? We're not here to be sold into Republican slavery just because you feel like it and you guys are all getting heady in meetings with Mitt Romney and have deluded yourselves that you're just going to be able to, you know, go in there and influence them. I'm going to reserve total judgment on this, and I'm going to get more into this when we come back. But down the road, we're not going to forget if Romney gets in and then there's a bunch of, you know, Rand Paul defending him stuff when he's doing wrong, I'm going to come after you. So be aware of that and understand that's the case. You understand? We'll be right back. I'm going to give the number out.
We're on the march.
Alex Jones here, back live. Ron Paul, a huge force, the early leader. The media said he couldn't win. They stole the early states from him. And I was critical of the fact that Ron Paul didn't make a bigger deal out of that, but I understand the strategy. If you sit there and talk about proven election fraud, it sounds like you're a sore loser. I know that Rand was on with us a few months ago and said that he had not talked to Romney, had not heard about it, that it was just speculation. Now he has met with him. And I would just like to see Rand Paul and Ron Paul address, this is my biggest concern here. This is what really makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That it's always announced on Sean Hannity that, oh, by the way, I'm endorsing Mitt Romney. And then Ron Paul is out there saying, now be respectful at the Tampa meeting. I mean, I thought we were supposed to get the delegates and go take over. I told everybody internally, I said, they are not going to do that. That is political suicide. People are like, you'll see, Alex, you'll see. I'm like, really, I'll see. I've been on air 17 years. I happen to know a thing or two. You know, I always underestimate what I know, and then I look at people who know nothing, always lecturing me all day. And it really gets old. You know, I was meeting with a high-level Republican this weekend, and, you know, nice guy, means well, has done some good work, and he's like, well, look, Obama's really bad. I mean, I know Mitt's not perfect, but Obama is really bad. You know, re-education centers. And I go, yeah, but it's this whole continuity of government isn't just the Democratic Party and Mr. Ayers or, you know, people like that out of Chicago. It's the big special interest. Everything Bush did, Obama continued. Everything Clinton did, Bush continued. And they're still, well, the public wants a change. And I understand the momentum of Obama's now been demonized. He's yesterday's, you know, lunch. He's rotten in the refrigerator. His political capital is going down by the second. He is a negative. And here comes Mitt Romney. And you want to believe things could change. And I told the Republican, high-level national journalist, I said, you mark my words. You mark my words. Mitt Romney, if he gets in, is going to continue everything Obama has done, except for stuff like gay marriage, political football issues. And that may matter to you individually, okay? The culture wars. And I'm not saying it's not important from both sides' perspectives, but it is shoved out there to distract the fact that both parties at the top are supporting bailouts, corporate welfare, new wars, police state, and overall entitlement programs are only getting bigger. So it's an extremely complex issue, and I'm not spinning. I'm trying to de-spin this, but I understand why the Paul family is doing what they're doing. They're going to see their political dynasty that has done so much good that's forming dissipate by a factor of, I'd say, 80% in their view, if they don't try to merge with the Republican Party. But isn't that, to a great extent, what Barry Goldwater did? And he just kind of faded off. I mean, Rand Paul is going to be remembered in history and have an effect if he doesn't compromise. It was the system's dirty tricks, Republican and Democrat, that tried to keep him out of office in Kentucky that galvanized people behind him. I mean, I had Rand Paul on a year before he ran when they were just talking about it, and I said, you will win, it will happen, you've got to get everybody behind you, you've got to announce early, and I said, that's it, listeners, send him money. Ron Paul said in 2008 on this show that half the support he had gotten in the campaign that far along, you can pull the interview up, came from this radio show. And so I have a responsibility here. I have a responsibility here to talk about these issues and tell you what I'm thinking. And the answer is I'm not sure. We had Lord Monckton on in the second hour today from Hawaii with big breaking news. I moved him to the third hour so we'd have a chance to talk to you. And I want to hear your points on this. Where do you see this going? We should have had this debate earlier, but it was just such mindless vitriol of you watch, we're going to win, we're going to get the delegates from the listeners that I didn't want to, rain on your parade. I just said, I even prayed about it and said, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this doesn't go the way I see it. And that didn't even mean Rand Paul running as vice president or Rand Paul getting a cabinet position or Ron Paul or the speaking engagement there, which is a clear set deal, big speaking, at the RNC, selling out for a bowl of porridge. I mean, this is nothing. That will discredit them when they're brought out and worshipped by Mitt Romney. See, I've been all over the country in the last year or so, and I've seen 0 Mitt Romney stickers. Richard Reeves, who drives constantly, he saw one in North Dallas a few months ago. I still see ridiculous, moron Obama stickers all over the country. I see 10% of what I saw 3 years ago. But 3 years ago, they were festooning everything as if it was the second coming of Christ or something. And just gullible morons. And I'm sorry, I just can't be a sucker, a schmuck, an idiot, a dupe, a useful moron, an idiot. I mean, I can't stand it. Now, I want to believe that Mitt Romney patting Ron Paul and patting Rand on the head means he wants to be a good guy, but that's all politics. I want to believe him saying he supports the Second Amendment and is against Obamacare and against carbon taxes. I want to believe that that's the truth. I want this nightmare to end. I want things to start reversing. I told the big Republican journalist, I said, look, in an off-record meeting, I said, I would tacitly not attack Mitt Romney as much if he would just reverse 20%. I mean, if we could just not go directly off the cliff, if the TSA stopped going down our pants, if they didn't, increase them, and if he didn't do carbon taxes. But I said, you mark my words, when he gets in there, they're going to launch more wars, more police state, all sorts of weird tricks. Romney loves tricks, dressing up as policemen his life, pulling people over, doing weird stuff. I mean, let me tell you, it's going to get weird. It's going to get strange. And it's going to get just as bad or worse with Obama. I understand that. But wouldn't it be